This is the Business Storytelling Show with Christoph Trapp. Name a top 20 storytelling podcast and a top 5% podcast globally. Christoph chats with thought leaders and experts to share tips and tricks that can help you tell your company's stories better to drive business results. Available wherever you listen to podcasts, live streamed on major social media channels, and part of the DB&A television network. Available on most U.S. television sets and streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire. Here's Christoph with today's episode. Let's go.
Let's go, business storytellers. Today, we're in virtual reality. 360 video. I know that's not the same thing. So some of you really, truly technical nitpickers, don't at me about this topic. But 360 video, let me tell you, immersive video. It is the future. I've done immersive video before. Actually won an award at the Folio Awards 2019, perhaps. We did, the timing is horrible. That's why I'm not showing you the video, quite frankly. We just had the school shooting in Texas. I mean, this madness has to stop. And that's all I'm going to say. But we did a active shooter training, and I actually recorded it with a 360 camera. So you can look around the room, you can see me, you can see the officer coming in, you can see all these different things happening, you can see people's faces, you can look around the room. And that was one application on how I used not live, but 360 video. So today we want to find out, how do we move that model into the live streaming world? Right now, I'm just doing these 2D shows, right? Like you see me how you see me. But is there value in me being in a 360 environment? Me being, somewhere where we can go around the room. And I'll be honest, my room doesn't look that great. There is a fake physical backdrop behind me. And if you go around the room, you just see pictures, mostly softball pictures of my daughters. So to talk about that topic, we have Alex Shrestha on the show. He is the founder of, didn't ask him how to pronounce it, Ocurr, I think. We'll see if I pronounce that correctly. Looks like I did. And he's focusing on 360 live video. So let's find out what that's all about. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris.
There we go. So you know what? You published a video somewhere online, and I watched your video, and you talked about how 360 works, and I love the concept. So before I ask any challenging questions, when do we do it? When do we use it? When does it make sense? Because I'm not convinced it makes sense in my office here. When I'm out doing an active shooter training, that's an easy one, right? Totally makes sense. When I'm out doing something, jumping out of a plane, I'm not doing that anytime soon, certainly could make sense. But give us the definition, 360 live video. How does that look? How does it work? And when should we use it?
Yeah, totally, Christoph. So I guess, to be frank, to my understanding, 360 and live, they're essentially born to be together, right? It just feels so right to have them to be paired. If we look at pre-recorded videos, and someone taking the recording of the video, it almost never works out to be really well until you do the post-production. And during the post-production, you cut out all of the pieces and keep the juicy parts and make it, amazing for a particular purpose. Whereas the 360 Live essentially allows you to be in the same environment and almost control that environment. Let me get back here from another angle. So live streaming on its own is massive, right? So in 2021, we probably hit around 550 billion hours of live streaming watched. And the number one reason for that to happen was because people wanted to have a look at behind the scenes and things that have been cut during the production. And here is where 360 makes even more sense, right? Because you get more space. And coming back to the question of your podcast, right? I think that 360 live streaming is not fit for every piece of content. And probably we haven't yet even unlocked the right content for 360. But the podcast that you're doing most people can listen and get the grasp and get the main value out of it. But if we're taking something more visual, and a good example would be a Twitch with gaming, right? I guess one of the reasons why Twitch and gaming went so well because of the context switching. So people were able, well, the streamers played games, and they also were able to stream those games while showing themselves. So the viewers are able to switch between the streamer and the context of the game, and essentially there were double the chances of being excited about something. So I think 360 will essentially unlock the same ability for what we call IRL streamers, right? In real life streamers.
What's interesting about that too is, once again, everything you do when it comes to content, you have to figure out what's your goal, number one, and then what is the best medium. And I know some of you old schoolers out there, we'll just call it that. Sometimes you feel very strongly about that. Oh my God, that's not a video. Oh my God, that's not anything. I still remember, Alex, about a decade ago, somebody was giving me a hard time to even dare that you're suggesting this, Christoph, to suggest to put audio with an article, reading the article. And now we have an entire industry that does that. We have an entire industry that creates AI audio content from written content. So there you go. So don't feel so bad about it if you're not hitting it on the nail on the head of the nail right away. So the way when I hear you talk, you and me talking might not be worth a 360 live stream, but if you and I are talking about, let's say the next show will be about equipment to use for a 360 live stream, and the equipment is all around my room, that could be a 360.
Totally. And I would like to make two examples here, right? So one of our streamers, he's essentially a creator on Twitch, right? So he's making wooden products from large pieces of wood. One of the challenges he was constantly having is because he has this large piece of wood, and he always wants to be in the picture, his hands in the picture, the objects in the picture, how he's doing the thing in the picture, but essentially he has to move the camera all the time. So it means every time he needs to refocus where the camera looks, is everything is in focus. And the other part to it is it's not only about making the product, but also the environment in which you're making the product, right? And most of the time, these hobbies, they have their garages full of equipment arranged in a certain way, and certain products that you're using that other viewers who are looking at are curious about, and it creates the topic to talk about. So, and here's another example where one of our creators have during the lockdown, he essentially did a Brazilian barbecue party with his friends, and he was just live streaming in 360. So they placed the camera on the center of a table. The boys talking about football, cooking the meat. The girls are cooking, making the drinks and making salads. But the star of the show was the cat, right? So he randomly appeared somewhere, and the viewers just went crazy, right? So they were tipping money, just asking to feed him, and whenever he showed up anywhere, people went nuts. And I think that's one of the powers of 360, that you might see something you don't expect that might surprise you, that it wouldn't be captured otherwise, and it's happening in real time, that you can impact it in a certain way.
But the other thing that's very interesting about what you were talking about is, so it's an advantage and disadvantage, right? That people can look around the room. And so if I'm on one side of the room and I'm showing you something, you can just, go away from me and look at something completely different. And that's good and bad, because you might miss the action, but it's also good because, maybe it keeps you engaged longer because you have something to do, right? You can look at something. And the other one that I remember I did, it was for interiors and sources. I think it's ins.design is the website now. And I was in a showroom in Chicago, and they showed me some things, and I literally just put the camera in the middle of the room, and then we voiced it over, and people could go around the room at their own pace. The problem so that's awesome. But the problem is it's really hard for me to show that video on the live stream right now, right? If I were to upload it, download it, it wouldn't look quite the right way because it would render differently than it would on the YouTube app or whatever. So how do we get around the whole rendering issue, displaying issue? How do we get people to experience these videos in the way they're meant to be consumed?
Well, I think 360 is definitely not new, but definitely not mature enough to have all the tools necessary for every particular purpose. So we have the high-end cameras, like producing this amazing quality videos, and then we have like the cheaper consumer grade stuff that we can take on a daily basis. So where we are focusing on is mostly the consumer and easy part. How do you actually make live streaming super easy for you, almost to carry it around with you, and whenever you want to just pull it off and start streaming. So basically, the hardware is pretty simple. Like 360 camera. This is my such like DIY setup, like with a tripod and a bicolor. That's for streaming, and it doesn't weigh a lot. And almost like you just hook it up to your phone and start streaming.
And I don't know, you flashed that pretty quickly, but is that so I used a 360 Nano before. It looks like that it's something like that you use for a camera, or what would you recommend?
Sorry, yeah. So this is the Insta360 One X.
Yeah.
And that's the one that we're currently using is supporting. So I mean, again, it's pretty small, like comparing to the phone, not heavy at all, and it produces like you can record up to 5.7K video on it.
So when you say that we're currently supporting, tell us about that. Tell us about Ocurr. How does that work? Why should people stream there, and how do you connect on that network as opposed to other places?
Yeah, so Ocurr, we're on a mission to we want to make stories, events, and people from around the world be accessible to audiences from anywhere, virtually. So what we essentially make is, okay, let's come back here. So 360 streaming is, again, not new, right? And you have platforms like Facebook and YouTube where you can live stream in 360. The thing is that most of the time is just a broadcast. So you send a video one way and that's it. So there's pretty much no point in it being live. What we're doing is creating the other lag where the creator who streams the video is able to receive messages from people who are watching and essentially react to them in with voice or actions or whatsoever. So this is one of the main parts that we're doing. We're making it super easy to start streaming. Hook up your camera, get an account with Ocurr, and you get your profile similar to YouTube or Twitch, and you essentially start streaming there. Also, right now, what we focus on is mostly travel-related content. So we want, we're in post-pandemic world. People are still a little bit more hesitant to travel, and we want to make them help them to make better decisions around the places they're choosing. So we work with online booking and travel agencies, also like consumers and tour guides, to run tours as a taster of a tour prior to coming in. So yeah, that's what we do currently at Ocurr.
Interesting. Of course, at some point there might be an opportunity there. Amazon Explore has virtual tours now, which are 2D. And personally, I find them slightly on the expensive side, right? $70 to go on a tour of some beach somewhere where I'm probably not going to go anytime soon. But if that's in 360, the experience is very different. Now, So tell me about, so I had the virtual reality headset on earlier, right? Just because that's a prop that I had nearby. What's the difference between 360 and VR? Because I mean, I can watch some 360 videos, like in the YouTube app or whatever. I can watch them wearing that exact same headset.
Yeah, totally. So the 360 video versus the VR video, essentially, the difference is that every angle or the video is essentially captured by two cameras at the same time. So if we look at my camera right here, I have two fisheye lenses from both sides. If you would want to have a VR native experience, then we would need to have two cameras from each side, right? Like similar to our eyes, and that's what gives us the ability to create depth in the objects on the video. Whereas, yes, you currently can still watch a 360 video on your VR headset, although it might feel a little bit flat, and essentially you would just get the mechanics of moving your hand versus actually feeling the depth of objects.
Interesting description, and maybe the best one I've ever heard. Quite frankly, so I appreciate that. So how I'm always worried about bandwidth, right? I mean, and I think everybody else is too, because I mean, even Restream moves me down to stream at 480, and I have to change it every time before I come back on. I haven't streamed at 480 since probably, like, I don't know, or done anything in 480 since 2002, or I don't know. It's been a while for sure. Um, but what's the bandwidth issue or dependency here, right? So if I'm out and about, and let's say I'm actually, I do want to mention this quickly. I will be heading, if you're watching this live and you are in Europe, especially, I hope you join me there. The Digital Enterprise Show is coming to Malaga this year. Barack Obama and myself, we're not speaking at the same time, but we are speaking at the same conference. So if you want to check that out, but the reason I just thought about that is because I'm walking on the beach in Malaga, and I brought my 360 camera. And now I'm going to shoot some 360 video, and I'm going live. What's the bandwidth? I mean, are we running into issues with that, or is it not any higher than just shooting any kind of live stream, doing any kind of live stream?
Yeah. So basically, so currently, for example, we are streaming at 1080p, and for us it requires anywhere. Well, we're advising to have 7.5 megabits per second of upload speed on your on your device that you're streaming from. I definitely ran a few times over my limits, and just eating all my data like pretty quickly. But I would guess that you would need to have about 1 or 2 gigabytes of data to be eaten for every few hours of live stream with 360.
And is that more or less than just doing a regular live stream with your phone holding up the regular phone? Do you know?
Yeah, here's the difference, right? So essentially, if you look at how the technology works, so it's like a pipe, right? So within this pipe, we're sending it data, and we're saying that with 360 camera, you're sending in 1080p data to the server. So, and it doesn't matter whether that's a 360 camera or standard camera if you're sending the same density of image. However, on the other end, as a user, if you're sending a 1080p or receiving a 1080p flat video, it's going to be probably way higher quality than a 360. Because what it means by that, a 1080p 360 video, you would still see only a frame, whereas the other part of the sphere will be unseen.
So what is I was going to ask you about some examples, but what are some good ways to get started for a brand? But before we do that, tell me about audio. So for example, when I believe it was, I remember who it was actually, one of the guests said, I have two setups. One is better for audio, one is better for video. Which one is more important? And my clear answer was audio. So because if your audio sounds bad or my audio sounds bad, people are not going to listen to us, right? Even if they can see us perfectly fine. But in this case, you also have to have good video. I mean, you always should have good video, but if you have to make a choice, how does the audio work on a 360? And I mean, is it just ambient sound, or are people talking to the people that are watching, or what's the typical setup?
Right. So um, it works pretty well. And I'm not sure like how Insta360 does that, right? But I bet they have like some sort of AI where they're picking up your voices versus like background noises. And I think that they do it like definitely pretty well. On the newer cameras that they have, you can have a separate headsets. You can connect your external camera, external microphone and use that. And I guess in future, with the development, we're definitely going to see way more flexibility on how we cater the audio. Because yes, I definitely agree that the audio part is more important, or at least the same importance as the video.
I mean, especially if you're talking, especially if if the audio has some impact. If I'm jumping out of a plane and the video is unbelievable to watch, I can probably get away with less than perfect audio, right? So I think it depends on that too. But short of jumping out of planes, what are some ways that brands can play around with live video? I mean, what are some ways to get started? I mean, I guess it does have to be visual, right? We have to be uh, finding something we can show people. But let's go a little deeper than that if we can. Like, what are some ways brands can think about that and start?
Yeah, great question. So I think here's an interesting thing. So we partnered with a few large European tech conferences where we essentially gave a tour guides within the exhibition areas of the conference events. And we again, we're in a post-pandemic world where the events want to go back to in person. Because it has more activity and it's like more exciting than the virtual events that we have seen during the COVID period. So the question then becomes, how do they keep the amount of eyeballs of the virtual world while still preserving the in-person experience? And most of the time, it requires taking two teams, like developing almost like separate conferences within one for the in-person, the other one for the virtual audiences. Whereas by partnering with us and using a 360-degree camera with a person who knows the ins and outs of the industry, they can make a virtual attendance experience for audiences around the world without almost any additional content. So they send a person with a camera to walk around the area and just show things around and talk them through. And this is could also be applied to events as manufacturing or supply chain, tours, or companies setting up a pop-up shops somewhere in the center of the cities. So how do you make that easily accessible to anyone around the world versus just people passing by?
I mean, there's plenty of companies and brands out there that certainly have things they can show off. I mean, I covered some things in the construction field before, and their conferences are outside because they have all this big equipment, right? And you can certainly use 360 video for that. The one thing that I always like to do is I like to repurpose my content. So, for example, if I were to shoot a 360 video or even a live stream, I also would repurpose the audio as a podcast. I know it's not quite as visual, obviously, but there is a certain level that you have to get over, right? Because you have to invest in the technology, you have to invest in the integration. And then what if nobody watches? How long do you give it that your 360 live streaming is worth the effort?
Yeah, so it's definitely there's definitely a learning curve, right? So as with any media and content type, so you have to invest your time and understand what works, what's not. This is part why we see also, giving impact to our creators is we transfer the learnings between them to make sure, they have all the best information available to make their content best. Secondly, you mentioned Amazon, right? Amazon experiences. And most of the virtual event platforms or experience platforms, they charge money upfront, which definitely is a way to sure like the events are packed or not. What we want to transfer from is a European model of free walking tours, right? And easy for the guys right now to take like 1 or 2 hours of their normal schedule and walk through the same path, but for virtual audiences. That's going to be free to watch. It's free for the guys to stream, and both us and the tour guides are making money through tips. So, and that's like how we see, being able to expose to more people and bring broader awareness to the experiences and help the creators, get enough audience and chances to find the fit with their content.
Fantastic. I definitely think there's a lot of opportunity with 360 video. I've done some before, and I thought it was maybe a little early in the game, honestly. But I think it's definitely evolving. There's definitely a place for brands to use 360 in your strategy. Check out Ocurr.com, oQQur.com. Alex, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate you sharing your insights.
Thanks a lot, Shrestha, for having me. It was a real pleasure.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review our show on your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to share this episode with your networks. We appreciate you. Until next time, let the best